Revenge with Karen. The last time the company books balanced on their own, Obama was still in office, and people thought fidget spinners cured anxiety. I knew I was stepping into a landfill when I took the job, but I didn't realize I'd be the poor bastard duct taping the methane leaks every quarter. First day on the job, the CFO handed me a login, a box of kind bars, and said, "We don't believe in silos here. Just figure it out." Translation: we're hemorrhaging money. Interns are cooking the books, and no one wants to get blamed. They called me executive assistant to the CFO, but what I really was, the department's janitor with a better font. I cleaned up cash flow disasters disguised as strategic pivots, rewrote vendor contracts to avoid lawsuits, and once spent a Friday night untangling a misfiled invoice trail that, had it gone unnoticed, would have triggered an IRS probe 3 states wide. He smiled and told the board, "It's all under control." Yeah, because I controlled it. Truth is, this company ran like a 3-legged possum on a Red Bull drip. People thought the CFO was some kind of visionary, a Wall Street whisperer with a flair for turning chaos into dividends. What he really had was a gift for smiling while others mopped up his blood trails. That others was me. I stayed late, showed up early, and kept my mouth shut when the numbers didn't add up, because I was the one who made them look like they did. And hey, if you're still listening at this point, chances are you like stories like this. Which is wild, because 97% of you listen without subscribing. If you want this madness to keep going, and trust me, it gets worse, smash that subscribe button, toss us a like. It's the only thing keeping our team from replacing our coffee with antifreeze. Anyway, the running joke was that I overthought things. No, Chad, proofread the quarterly report you signed without opening it. They'd have the interns slap together forecast models in Canva, and I'd be the one reformatting them at 1 a.m., so we didn't look like a lemonade stand run by drunk raccoons. I once rewrote a budget justification using 3 fake departments just to justify why we were billing corporate travel through a landscaping vendor. It worked. No one asked questions. My breaking point should have come earlier, maybe when he called a $400K accounting error a rounding discrepancy, or when I caught him photoshopping his name onto a compliance award from 3 years ago. But I stayed, not out of loyalty, out of strategy. I knew what I was sitting on. I knew where the skeletons were buried because I was the one handed the shovel. The company was always one misstep from collapse, and I was the duct tape, the uncredited fix-it ghost in heels and a badge that said assistant. They didn't realize that while they were busy sipping overpriced espresso and slapping each other on the back, I was quietly building something else, leverage. The memo was supposed to be routine, just a quarterly summary of fund allocation for R&D expenses. Only the numbers weren't adding up. Again, the dates were off and the signatures were missing, and somehow we'd billed 2 different departments for the same vendor. I flagged it, highlighted the gaps, sent it back with a note, "Needs correction before submission." 5 minutes later, my boss storms into my cubicle reeking of expensive hair gel and ego, holding his phone like it was a scalpel. "Just backdate it," he said, tossing the printout onto my keyboard like it was a napkin from some frat party fundraiser. "It's already been spent. Paperwork just needs to catch up, not the other way around." I stared at him. "You want me to backdate a financial record?" Grinned. "No, I need you to backdate a financial record." Big difference. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just picked up the sheet and walked it to his desk, placed it down, and said, "If you want it falsified, do it yourself." And he did. 2 clicks, 1 keystroke, and a smug little message in Slack, "Memo updated. Time travel is real. Lol." That lol hit like a hammer. Not because it was funny, but because it was casual. Like ethics were a casual Friday thing he could skip with the right blazer. I hovered over the message. Hit CMD plus Shift plus 4. Screenshot. Labeled it 1 Slack memo backdate PNG, and saved it to a private folder I'd quietly created the week before, when he asked me to tweak the language in an invoice trail to make it less discoverable. That was the moment it hit me. This wasn't a dumpster fire I was babysitting. This was a crime scene. I was the idiot scrubbing up the footprints while the guy holding the matches got promoted. I started cataloging. Not dramatic, not noisy. Just organized. Every time I saw something that made my stomach twist a little, an adjusted invoice, a deleted calendar invite from legal, a reimbursement that didn't match any travel logs, I'd take a screenshot. Print to PDF, timestamp, archive. My laptop had 2 desktops now, one for work, one for war. Every corporate fairy tale they sold us, about transparency, ethics, whistleblower protections was just marketing copy. And I knew it. But knowing and feeling it, two different beasts. This was the first time I felt it. That itch in your spine when you realize you're the last sane person in a collapsing funhouse. That the clown in charge isn't incompetent. He's playing a game with rules no one else can see. He kept smiling, kept joking, kept throwing bodies under the bus and calling it resource optimization. Meanwhile, I kept my head down and my archive growing, quietly building my own firewall of receipts, just in case the day came where the bus swerved my way. Spoiler, it would. The offer came from a boutique consulting firm in Boston, double the pay, half the headaches, and actual titles that matched job descriptions. For a moment, I let myself dream. Clean desk, clean conscience, job where I didn't have to decode ethical landmines before 9 a.m. I even bought a new blazer, navy blue, power color. The kind of thing people wear when they finally stop being ignored, and then legal called. Apparently, buried in the fine print of my onboarding packet was a non-compete clause broad enough to choke a small country. I wasn't allowed to work for any company dealing with corporate compliance, finance, or strategic advisory services within a 500-mile radius. Basically, unless I wanted to sell smoothies or become a mall Santa, I was screwed. That night, I sat in the parking lot under flickering halogen lights, eating a granola bar that tasted like drywall, and asking myself, why am I still here? Inside, the office had become a frat house with better dental. My boss, let's call him Todd, because of course his name was Todd, brought in 3 finance interns from his old MBA cohort. One of them wore loafers without socks and referred to me exclusively as admin girl. Another asked if I made coffee too while I was editing a 43-page internal audit report that could have prevented a lawsuit. Every morning, I'd walk in, past the CFO's Porsche, and remind myself, you are not here to fix them. You're here to watch them implode correctly. I started locking my drawer, started keeping personal notes on a flash drive instead of the company network, started cross-referencing every Slack joke with invoice approvals and meeting logs. Not for fun, not for revenge, for insurance. Because if I was going to be stuck here while the ship took on water, I wasn't going down without my own damn life raft. See, the moment you realize the entire house is built on rot, you stop trying to save it. You start mapping the exits. I'd sit in meetings watching Todd explain strategic liquidity shifts, read, cooking the books with buzzwords, and smile while noting the exact timestamp he contradicted himself. The interns laughed, the board nodded, and I kept my poker face, pen in hand, archive growing with every lol and circle back and just adjust the dates. I didn't leave, because I couldn't, but also because I knew something no one else did. The company didn't need a scandal to collapse, needed one person to stop cleaning up. And that person was me, so I made a choice. If I couldn't leave cleanly, I'd leave completely. And when I did, I'd take the whole damn curtain down with me. The fire started in late Q2, a quiet little blaze in the ledger. A $2.4 million write-down from a misclassified asset pool that could have sunk our quarterly targets like a cinder block in a kiddie pool. Todd didn't even flinch, just tossed the file on my desk and said, make it pretty. Like I was decorating a crime scene with throw pillows. I didn't sleep that week. Cross-referenced 6 months of vendor logs, unearthed 3 misfiled depreciation schedules, and traced a trail of phantom expenses tied to a shell subsidiary someone created to streamline contractor billing. It was a spreadsheet coded in corporate lunacy. But I cracked it. Then I fixed it. Rewrote the classifications, bundled the line items under an IRS-safe deferral strategy, and even included a legal summary that would have made a tax attorney weep with joy. I stapled the damn plan together like it was sacred scripture and handed it to Todd with all the quiet pride of a woman who just talked a loaded gun out firing. The board was scheduled to visit the following Monday. I wasn't invited to the meeting, but I was asked to polish the decks. Classic. Through the frosted glass of Conference Room B, I watched Todd present my recovery plan, every slide, every fix, every bullet point worded exactly the way I wrote it. He clicked through like a game show host. Here's how we minimized loss. Here's our new depreciation alignment strategy. And here, he said, gesturing with a toothy grin, is the magic of trusting your team, especially my assistant. She prints like a pro. I felt something snap inside me, not loud, not obvious, just final, like a light going out in the back of the freezer you never open. The interns giggled. One of them high-fived him after. I stood by the printer, smile stapled to my face, hands clenched so tight my nails left crescent moons in my palm. He didn't see the plan. He saw output. A deliverable. Something he could repurpose, take credit for, used to climb another rung on the ladder I was too busy holding steady for him. I walked back to my desk in silence, took a breath, and opened the folder I'd been quietly curating for months, labeled it threads to chain zip, and began sorting. The backdated memo went first, then the Slack message, memo updated, time travel is real, lol. Then the invoice trail, 3 vendors, 1 PO, 2 dates. Then the audit logs I downloaded after noticing a deletion timestamp that didn't match any user activity. Whole thing clicked into place like a loaded revolver. It wasn't a scrapbook anymore. It was evidence. A linear, time-stamped, cross-referenced proof of negligence, fraud, and willful manipulation. And if the next words out of Todd's mouth were going to be restructure or reassignment, I'd be ready, not to beg, to burn. They announced it on a Tuesday, because of course they did. Tuesdays are the perfect day to stab someone quietly, far enough from Monday chaos, close enough to Friday that no one can make too much noise before the weekend. Todd strutted into the all-hands like he was launching a lifestyle brand and dropped the word realignment. We've been looking at efficiencies, he said, like we hadn't been bleeding morale for 18 months. Some roles will be absorbed. It's about streamlining, agility, growth. I wasn't on the official list. I was on the off-the-record one. Meeting came an hour later in the small conference room that still smelled like old toner and denial. HR smiled like a funeral director on commission. Todd leaned against the wall, arms crossed like this was all beneath him. The board doesn't see the need for your position anymore, HR said, like she was reading a fortune cookie. No severance, no thank you, just an implied shrug and a manila folder with my name spelled wrong. Todd didn't even look at me, just checked his watch and said, "We'll need you to transition key files to Bryce." Bryce, the new strategy associate with a LinkedIn full of stock photos and a resume that read like someone Googled finance buzzwords and threw them into a blender. He showed up at my desk 10 minutes later, chewing gum and calling me sweetheart. "Hey, could you walk me through your folder system or whatever?" he asked, spinning my chair before I even stood up. I looked at him. He looked, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel tired. I felt sharp, like something cold had finally settled in behind my ribs where all the burned-out empathy used to be. This was never about efficiency. It was about erasure. I was too good at hiding their messes, too thorough. And now that the quarterly numbers looked clean and the audit logs weren't actively on fire, I'd become a liability with a memory. They didn't just want me gone. They wanted me forgotten. I don't go quietly, not anymore. I walked back to my desk, ignored the dozen unread Slack pings, and opened my private email. Drafted the subject line, pattern of manipulation, confidential thread, attached the file, threads to chain zip. Then opened another tab and logged into LinkedIn. You want me gone? Fine. But I decide how, I decide when, and I decide who burns. I waited until the office was hollowed out by lunchtime, just me, of the HVAC and the faint sound of Bryce trying to unjam the copper like it owed him rent. I moved slow, methodical, opened Slack, switched to the private channels, and scrolled. My fingers didn't shake. My pulse didn't race. I was past all that. This wasn't adrenaline. This was surgery. Thread buried in hash finance snippets. Date stamped 4 months back. Todd, in his usual overconfident slouch, typing like no one in history had ever screenshot a damn thing, used the alt invoice channel from Jay. They don't ask too many questions, smirking face, someone responded with a popcorn emoji. Someone else joked, vendor of the year. I didn't laugh. I clicked the triple dot menu, downloaded the transcript, saved the screenshot, labeled it 06 alt invoice Todd PNG. Then I zipped it together with the folder I'd been grooming like a bonsai tree for 9 months. Just in case final zip, not dramatic, not flashy, just insurance in its purest form, time-stamped, labeled, and ready to detonate. I opened a burner Gmail account I'd made the day HR first asked me to reformat a compliance checklist because legal found inconsistencies and didn't want the board confused. Back then, I'd thought I was being paranoid. Now, I thanked that past version of me like she was a guardian angel with a flash drive. Subject line, FYI patterns of concern. No greeting, no signature. Just the zip file and 1 sentence. This is not a mistake. This is a pattern, but I wasn't done. No, this wasn't just about exposure. It was about precision. 1 shot, straight through the gut. I dug through my old inbox and found the name, Rachel Dumont. We met at Dry as Toast regulatory compliance training 2 years ago in Chicago. Everyone else was half asleep. She and I stayed late arguing SEC language over boxed wine. Turns out she'd left the firm and now worked with a federal oversight group, specializing in corporate irregularities. I BCC'd her. Subject line, internal memo trail compliance relevance, then attached one thread. Just one. The memo backdating with Todd's little time travel is real. Lol. No threats. No plea for help. Just data. Labeled, clean, and poisoned with context. Closed all tabs. Cleared browser history. Deleted local copies. The final version lived only in 3 places: the burner email, a USB drive duct-taped under my desk drawer, and a cloud folder titled Recipes 2020. They'd spent years assuming I was just a pair of typing hands, a quiet assistant who wouldn't notice the blood on the ledgers. They forgot I saw everything, and now someone else would too. Board day was always a circus. This one had extra grease paint. Todd showed up in a tailored suit so tight it looked like it was stitched onto his ego. He wore cufflinks shaped like little dollar signs, subtle as a brick to the face, and smiled like he'd just personally resurrected the NASDAQ. The office felt tense. Meetings canceled, coffee pods vanished, interns reeking of cologne like they thought the board could smell productivity. Todd floated from desk to desk with fake charm, slapping backs and mispronouncing names while I sat quietly at mine, printing compliance summaries that had been whitewashed beyond recognition. One of them referenced a non-existent vendor rotation protocol. Another cited an ethics policy that hadn't been updated since 2016. He handed me the clicker. Put the deck on the drive. Keep the fonts tight. Don't make me look like I use PowerPoint for therapy. Of course, I said. Smile, nod, save. File labeled Q4 review final real final PPTX. I wasn't invited into the meeting. Naturally. They wanted me to prep the slides, sanitize the numbers, print the binders, but God forbid I sit in the room and breathe the same filtered air as the people who still thought Todd was a strategic savant and not a chaos goblin in a designer tie. At noon, the glass doors opened and out came the laughter. Todd was holding court near the catered lunch table, surrounded by board members and wide-eyed interns. He raised his glass of sparkling water like it was champagne and said to my team, flawless execution. Especially her, just my assistant. But she prints like a pro. The room laughed, not cruelly, not maliciously, just casually, because that's how women like me get erased, one patronizing toast at a time. I felt nothing, not anger, not shame, just clarity. I walked out of the room, past the copier, past the open plan desks where people pretended not to notice, down the hall to the stairwell where the Wi-Fi was weak and the air tasted like drywall and resignation. Pulled out my phone, opened the burner Gmail, attached the zip file, paused for one breath, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to remember the moment I stopped being part of their lie. Then I hit send. Not loud, not dramatic. Just one thumb, one button, one kill shot, delivered in silence, wrapped in evidence. While upstairs, they clinked glasses over my work, oblivious to the fact that the floorboards were already soaked in gasoline. It happened between the shrimp cocktail and the gluten-free brownies. Reception cut through the boardroom laughter like a knife. Sorry to interrupt, but there's a special agent on line 1. He says it's urgent and needs to speak with the executive team immediately. Forks clattered. Someone muttered, FBI, like it was a foreign word. Todd froze mid-sentence, half-smile still twitching on his face like it hadn't gotten the memo yet. Then it dropped. His eyes darted across the table like he was checking for exits that didn't exist. Probably a prank, one board member chuckled. It wasn't. Todd grabbed his phone, fumbled the unlock, and disappeared down the hall like a man trying not to run in a burning building. HR followed, tight-lipped and white-knuckled. Eagle broke off from the lunch buffet, face drained like they'd just remembered what they didn't redact. I stood at the printer, quiet as ever, watching it all unfold with the calm of someone who already knows the third act twist. Then came the Slack scramble. Hey, where's the vendor thread? Why are some messages missing? Did we clear the audit logs last quarter? Why does the finance channel stop at May? Someone jogged past me toward IT, waving their phone. Another pulled out a laptop right there on the catering table, elbow deep in arugula. Panic always smells like citrus vinaigrette and toner ink. The best part? Nobody looked at me, not once. They passed me like wallpaper, like office furniture. The woman who prints, the assistant, The background. Meanwhile, I had it all. Every thread, every memo, every date-fudging lol, neatly zipped, backed up twice. Mirrored to a second drive currently sitting in a locked box next to a stack of old tax returns and a flashlight with dead batteries. Todd came back into the room, pale and sweating like a dog in a thunderstorm. He whispered something to Legal. Legal immediately stopped chewing. Across the room, Bryce, the intern who once called me sweetheart, was frantically Googling federal wire fraud statute like he was cramming for a test no one told him about. I took a sip of lukewarm coffee, leaned back in my chair, and watched the facade crumble like expired drywall under a leaky pipe. They built this place on shortcuts and cover stories. They assumed if no one asked questions, the answers didn't exist. But I had them, all of them. And the only question now was how loud the landing would be when the floor finally gave way. They called me in like it was a parent-teacher conference. No explanation, just a tight-lipped HR rep and a calendar invite titled Discussion Compliance Context. That's corporate for we know you know. The room was cold and beige. Legal sat with a yellow pad like this was still salvageable. HR smiled like she practiced in the mirror. And at the end of the table, the board chair, buttoned up, silver-haired, trying hard not to look rattled, folded his hands and said, "We're hoping you can provide some clarity on recent irregularities." I sat down, no apology, no explanation, just one breath. Then I pulled out my phone, unlocked it, and said, "The thread you want starts with a joke. Would you like me to forward it again?" No one spoke. I opened Gmail, scrolled once, tapped, subject line, FYI patterns of concern. Sent again, this time to the board alias. The silence that followed was holy. HR blinked fast. Legal dropped her pen. Board chair looked down at his phone like it had just confessed to a crime. Then someone knocked. It was facilities. "There are two gentlemen in the lobby," he said, eyes wide. "They say they're with the bureau. Federal." The board chair didn't move. HR stood up so fast her chair skidded. Legal mouthed something that looked a lot like shit. Across the hall, I could see Todd being pulled into another room, face red, hands flailing like he could explain away the fire with a good PowerPoint. They didn't cuff him in front of us. That would come later. But they did escort him out. The glass doors hissed shut behind him like a judgment. No one looked at me, until the board chair finally did. He cleared his throat and said, "Thank you for your diligence." Not exactly a standing ovation, but I didn't need one. I stood, slipped the badge from my neck, and placed it gently on the table. "Welcome," I said. "You should check the zip file, too. It has footnotes." Then I walked out. Through the bullpen, past the stammering interns, the slack-jawed assistants, the frozen tableau of a company realizing it had mistaken silence for loyalty. In the parking lot, the sun was just starting to set, orange and brutal, like a warning or a promise. My car door clicked open. In the passenger seat sat an envelope. Inside, my signed resignation, already submitted via scheduled email, and a printed offer letter from a forensic audit firm that doesn't mistake invisible for irrelevant. I wasn't triumphant. I was free. Honestly, this story hit me because it shows how dangerous it is to underestimate the quiet ones. The people doing the real work are often invisible until they decide they're not. If you've ever swallowed your pride just to keep the peace at work, this one's for you. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.